Hello, my name is Debbie Hepplewhite, and I'm going to help you to navigate this Alphabetic Code Charts website. Did you know that the English spelling system is based on the most complex alphabetic code in the world? So first of all, I'm going to show you what I mean by the most complex compared to an alphabetic code that is not nearly so complicated. So I'm going to click on my free code charts button, first of all, and take you right down to a little mini chart, which is just on 2 sides of A4. So I want you to glance at this chart. It's just on 2 sides. Down the left-hand column, we've got the around 44 sounds or phonemes of the English language. That's the smallest sounds that we can identify in spoken words. Take a look at it. If you look at the first sound, as in snake, you can see all of these different spelling alternatives that are in different words for just one sound. It isn't just a case of one letter is code for the sound. In fact, the only sound that has the one letter is just ah, and everything else is really complicated. So just take a glance at that and its complexity. This is a very comprehensive coverage of the spellings in English. So there are far more of unusual spellings, but this is good enough to look at. And now what I'm going to do to compare that with the Spanish alphabetic code. So if I click on the other languages button and we look at this example of a Spanish alphabetic code chart, oh my goodness, can you see the enormous difference? So compared to the around 44 sounds in English speech, in Spanish we have around 24 sounds. So I've put the sounds down the column. We show sounds in the slash marks, and you can see there are some spelling alternatives, but compared to the English spelling system, it's just in a different league. So if you're a teacher teaching Spanish reading and spelling, it's not nearly as challenging as it is for a teacher trying to teach the English alphabetic code. So as teachers, we need to distinguish between the notion of the alphabet, which has got all of the letter shapes on, and this notion of an alphabetic code chart. I call them overview charts. So if we return to our page of free code charts, I want to show you and tell you why there are so many different designs. Because you are different users and there may be different purposes for your use of an alphabetic code overview chart. So scrolling down, I've got this one here, top left, right, which we'll look at in more detail in a minute, which is just one side of A4, one sheet of paper. And yet other charts, some have got teaching principles on of the systematic synthetic phonics approach. Some have got teaching points for the code itself. Some are just more print friendly in that they haven't got as many colors. Some are what I call giant charts, which print off, it might be 10 sheets of A4 paper to have the whole code, but you might put that on your classroom display wall. Then you've got different versions of mini alphabetic code charts, which are great for home or in learners' phonics folders. Then you've got some different designs of tracking charts. And then actually we've got some alternative charts, which have got very small changes in them, which may better suit the American and Canadian accents. There you go. So a massive range of alphabetic code charts. So let's take a look at their similarities and differences. Going back to the top of the free code charts page, let's have a look at this one top left, and I'll explain a little bit about it. This little chart is introducing the notion of the International Phonetic Alphabet, which is abbreviated to IPA. Now, these IPA symbols down here on the left column in black have, they're not all letter shapes. They might look similar. And if you look at the consonant sounds, some are the same as actual alphabet letter shapes, but they introduce a whole new set of symbols to notate the sounds. We always show sounds in slash marks, so when you see those slash marks, that's referring to the sound and not the spelling. So as teachers, as professionals, we need to know about the International Phonetic Alphabet, but phonetics is a precise science. These notations here are for precise sounds which can be across different languages. And as we've explained, there are less sounds or fewer sounds in the Spanish language, nearly half as many as can be identified in English speech. However, I'm introducing a notion of easy to use ways of showing the sound. I'm still using the slash marks, and where I can use colour, I'm putting vowel sounds in red lettering, consonant sounds in blue lettering, and down here you can see that there are many vowel sounds in the English language that can be identified, whereas in the Spanish language, there's really only around 5 vowel sounds. So the main differences between the speech sounds in Spanish and English are around the vowel sounds. So this natty little chart is showing you different ways of showing the sounds. Now, because these are just easy to use notation, you can modify them to your accent. So the English language consists of many, many, many different dialects or accents, and that can be country specific as well as region specific. But what you're able to do with this notation, it's not a scientific breakdown of sounds. You can just say to your learners, well, in our region or in our country, we pronounce that word or that spelling like this, and just give your own translation of the sounds. Now, I always put sounds down the columns because they do come to an end point. And I put the spelling alternatives that are code for the sounds across the rows. So here I've got various spellings, but I put them in whole printed words. Now this is very important rather than just having the letter or the letter group, because another complication of the English spelling system is the position in the word, right? And so it's always good to show spellings and spelling alternatives within a word to exemplify that little bit of code. So I'm just going to move away from that chart at the moment, but that would be one that we might look at as teachers. Then I've got charts, which this one, for example, top right, this is in a larger scale. Some universities use this in their literature for student teachers. And it includes a lot of information about the English alphabetic code and about my way of defining the systematic synthetic phonics teaching principles, which is not exactly the same as other people's, because I promote teaching the code, the alphabetic code, both systematically and incidentally, but we'll look at that in a minute. So I've included on this particular chart, which, as I say, is very good for teacher training, the easy to use symbols, but also the International Phonetic Alphabet symbols as well. So teachers can become familiar with that notion. And I don't put this order of sounds in that's anything to do with my phonics programs or a phonics program. I've simply put this order in to do with vowel sounds first of all, and then consonant sounds. So it's organized on that basis. However, I have used the key picture words like and apple that I've used in my No Nonsense Phonics program and Phonics International program and across my alphabetic code charts. Now, this is very helpful because it makes a lot of code more memorable. But I've done it in a simple word, not a phrase, or some people call that a ditty. It's just a word. And it's also good for young learners and for those learners that are only learning the English language, even if they're older learners, because it's showing what the word is. So it's given the printed word apple and it's shown what an apple is. Printed word egg, shown what an egg is, and so on. Now I've got some techniques in my alphabetic code charts. These are actually spelling reference charts, but I've also put some design in to do with reading as well. Let's take the example of the sound O as in octopus. Now, when we are reading and we see in print the letter pattern WA or QUA or ALT, that can alert us as readers for pronouncing that letter A, not as A, but as O. So WA is sort of wa, as in watch, or even in was. Want, wasp, swamp, swan. And then QUA, we're not saying qua, we're saying quo. Now, there are some words where that QUA would be pronounced A, as in quack. So we need the flexibility to say to our learners, in some words, this is pronounced qua, in some words it's pronounced qua, and so on. So we need that flexibility built into our understanding ourselves and also for our teaching and learning. So the hollow letter is not the code, it's just part of a letter pattern which alerts you to the possible code in that word, the pronunciation in that word. Now, these are teacher training alphabetic code charts. So down the right-hand side, I've broken down the synthetic phonics teaching principles where we're teaching the knowledge of the alphabetic code, that is the letter sound correspondences, and the 3 core phonics skills: decoding, which is sounding out and blending all through the printed word for reading unknown words; encoding, which is spelling, orally segmenting or identifying the sounds all through the spoken word, then select the correct letters and letter groups as code for those sounds identified, but also handwriting. So in our teaching of phonics programs, we can build handwriting in, both using the alphabet for the whole bank of the letter shapes, lowercase and capital letters, but also when we're teaching the phonics program itself. And so down that side, I'm explaining that then we then go on to apply our cumulative bank of words, sentences and texts there, all the phonics skills. Now, my 2-pronged teaching approach is that we have a systematic body of work that's planned, but teachers are free to teach any little bit of phonics incidentally as required. I mentioned about accents and so on. So it's all down there. Lots of lovely information, and actually you can see that this chart is packed full of information, and it is really suitable for universities and any form of teacher training. So moving along then, moving to this one with teaching points, I've now got colour coding in that happens to be in my Phonics International programme and No Nonsense Phonics programme. But you don't have to use the programs. It's still quite useful to use some colours to break up that really complex code. It's another way to teach it in chunks and to make it memorable. And down the right-hand column this time, I've got teaching points about the code. Some of these which are repetitive about double consonant letters and so on. So when you're trying to think about how you can teach and make sure that even though you're a reader yourself, how will you put that across to your learners? This particular chart would be great to print off, to put in your teacher's file, to just make sure you're happy with that language. You will also find that I use the language always of teaching code. We are teaching a complex code. I never say letters make sounds or say sounds. That's baby language or infant language. I say that the letters and letter groups are code for the sounds. So right from the beginning of my phonics programs, I'm introducing the various alphabetic code overview charts to say, I'm teaching you a code. It's going to take me a long time, but I'm always here to support you with that. And we're actually enabling self-teaching and learning as well. Right, here's the range of giant charts for your classroom wall display. You can just print them off as A4 versions. You can enlarge them to twice as big as A3 and maybe do 2 great big columns. But again, it's choices. Some of these have got pictures to go with the words. Some have got the color coding. Some have got very little color in. Now, one of my most favorite charts is the one that we've already looked at, this little mini alphabetic code chart, which can be used throughout primary, in juniors and Key Stage 2, and even in secondary. So some secondary schools are providing their learners with this, maybe in the first couple of years, maybe just for special needs, that's intervention. But again, it's something which by providing you with all of these different charts, that gives you a choice. I also always recommend, when I do teacher training, and I do that throughout the sectors in teaching, to provide this other little Spanish chart, even if it's just a copy at the front of the class, to wave to the learners and say, look, this is the Spanish code, and then compare it with the English code and say, this is why it's going to be a hard slog doing reading, teaching you spelling, and teachers really benefit from having a very, very well thought through body of work for that. So I've run you through my alphabetic code charts. There are various people using them in different contexts throughout the world, different countries, who find them really, really helpful. Have a look at our free phonics program, phonicsinternational.com. And if you've got any queries, please feel free to email me at debbie@phonicsinternational.com. Ciao.